Before I actually give my sermon, I would like to read a poem that was written by a colleague of mine who I really admire. Her name is her name is Rachel Barenblatt, and she has been writing poetry for decades. And whatever she comes up with, it always goes straight to the heart. So I want to use this as the framing before I offer you my remarks. I will give you a heads up. My sermon is on the longer end, should run about 20 minutes, or 22 minutes, because the subject matter deserves that amount of time. So thank you for bearing with me. The poem is called I Can't. How can we approach a new year when time stopped on Shmini Atzeret? The pause of the 8th day, when God beseeches, linger with me a little longer, and we relish the sukkah's peaceful fragility. Just one more day before jubilant circle dances with Torah in our arms like a toddler. Last year, we woke on that awful day to the news of Hamas attacks. And now it's Elul again, when the king is in the field, but this year God walks with us in endless mourning, paying Shiva call after Shiva call. And there are still hostages, though 6 fewer living ones than last week. Not to mention whole neighborhoods razed to rubble, resurgence of polio, 40,000 Palestinian souls dead, an endless abyss of grief. I can't write an Elul poem this year when my heart stopped beating properly on Shemini Atzeret and may never feel entirely unbroken again. Imagine the two of them walking up the mountain path, their sandaled feet cut by bristle and thorn. The sun is already hot mid-morning. Their calves ache from the effort, and their parched throats speak few words. One is old, the other young. The old one is driven by a zealotry that the young one struggles to comprehend. The young one questions the purpose of their 3-day trek to Moria. An unspoken dread settles over him. He must ask, Avi, father? The old one looks at him, the fire in his eyes dimming for something sorrowful and tender. Hineni beni, I am here, my son. We know how the story continues. We have the wood and the fire, but where is the sheep for the burnt offering? We feel the drama in our bones, even if we know the outcome. Isaac gets bound upon the altar, Abraham's knife hovering over him, the ram's horns caught in the thicket, offering swift redemption. Isaac is spared his life. Abraham, perhaps, is spared his conscience. It is a raw, painful, complicated, hopeful story exposing every seam of love and pain in our collective Jewish condition. Both love and pain resonate stronger this year than in many years before. October 7th and the ensuing ever-escalating war leaves us in a state of shock, grasping for words to describe our experience. I remember in those early days, we struggled hard to make sense of our place in the world. I will never forget the kindness of local Christian clergy who showed up at the synagogue mere days later, bearing flowers and lit candles in a quiet vigil. I embraced them, but I did not know what to say. The grief was too raw. This would become a pattern, our relationship with the outside world recalibrating in real time. I remember struggling to talk to non-Jews outside the orbit of our own community. And no matter my ecumenical interfaith universalist inclinations, I wanted to be left alone with my own people. I know many Jews experienced and expressed a similar yearning. What does it mean to walk up to Moriah together, to Moriah, the weight of the unspeakable between us? Turning away from the Gentile gaze of social media and media, we also found that we needed to recalibrate our Jewish relationships. It did not take long for our communities to fracture along lines of ideology, experience, and moral commitment. With each passing day of the war, the fissures widen. Not only did many of us struggle to speak to non-Jews, we also struggled to speak to our fellow Jews. Sometimes we lost trust, relationships, and assumptions of safety and belonging when we needed these the most. Abraham and Isaac never spoke again after the binding, and Sarah, his mother, died soon after. I believe it will take historians years, if not decades, to truly analyze and contextualize what this annus horribilis has meant for our people. But right now, we all feel the immediacy of its profound trauma. Among this pain, what does it mean to love? To love Jews and to love humanity. I promised a sermon series on love. But as I noted yesterday, it is not ours to trade complexity for sentimentality. A complicated love is what we will be holding today in our scriptures, prayers, and in our hearts. And the stories of our people may offer us a way through. I often insist that we Jews are a particular people with a universal mission. The paradox of Rosh HaShanah is that it is our most universalist festival. Arguably, it's not a Jewish holiday at all, but the holiday of all humanity and creation. Hayom Harat Olam. Today is the birthday of the world. And at the same time, Rosh HaShanah is the most particular expression of the most Jewish festival through its sheer ability to gather Jews to synagogues and cultural centers, dipping apples in honey and tightening our communal relationships with cords of love. Today, I want to tell the story of us and what it means for our collective condition and conscience. The length and breadth of our tradition has struggled to reconcile our lofty humanitarianism with the basest impulses of revenge. The jealousies of Hagar and Sarah, of Ishmael and Yitzchak, are well documented in the Hebrew Bible. Our tradition asks sincerely what it means to love our fellow Jews, Ahavat Yisrael, without abdicating the responsibility of loving the stranger, Ahavat Ger, and all humanity. Now, often, these are presented as a zero-sum game, but I think this is an error which is proving catastrophic in our time. To love our fellow Jews means to feel kinship to our fellow Jews, to be bound by a common bond, a shared destiny, and unshakable joint responsibility. Kol Yisrael arevim ze ba ze, the Talmud insists. All of Israel is responsible for one another. It is something as small as the sense of Jewish geography when you travel to another state and find so-and-so who is related to so-and-so and who knows so-and-so. And it is something as great as the transnational solidarity of the global Jewish civilizational project, the deeply shared pain in the face of the horrifying massacre on October 7th. Witnessing over 1,200 of our own brutally murdered, and the outpouring of concern for the hostages who remain. We feel it in the shock waves of love and pain that reverberated through the community after Hirsch Polin Goldberg's cruel and unnecessary death. Many of us read the pages in Haaretz, the heartbreaking eulogy of his courageous mother. We are often only 1 or 2 degrees separate from each other. It is exactly this closeness that I have not been able to fully explain to my non-Jewish friends. And that tribal pride and protectiveness, in the best of ways, that comes with being Jewish, of feeling your chest swell with the collective wisdom and achievements of our civilization, is second to none. I feel that pride every day. However, the love for our own people can become a tormented, misplaced, or self-absorbed love. It is hard to determine the tipping points through multi-generational trauma and woundedness, where solidarity with one's kin slides into something superioristic. To take seriously the mitzvah of Ahavat Yisrael means grappling with its long shadows. We see the consequences of this play out on the geopolitical stage, whether it's through the messianic warmongering of Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, or through the much smaller but still cutting conflicts that play out in the local or domestic sphere, where Jew bitterly fights Jew. It's reflected in the language of internal dehumanization. You are no longer a Jew if ... Fill in the dotted line. It's reflected in the struggle to think deeply, honestly, and vulnerably on what it means for our people to go from powerlessness to military superiority, and in some cases, Jewish supremacy in the course of 2 generations. Among the many emotional twists of a cruel year and the current regional escalation, the constant recalibrating of our Jewish commitments can leave us unbalanced, untethered, and exhausted. Where we yearn for calm, there is only chaos, rising anti-Semitism, an entrenched global conflict, intergenerational trauma, internal division, moral injury. It feels grotesque, utterly grotesque, that I preached on Jewish joy last year. This year, the Yiddish, schwer zu sein a Yid. It's hard to be a Jew, cuts much closer to the bone. So in the midst of all of this, where do we turn? We turn to 2 stories of Rosh HaShanah. They are subtle, but subversive. We will leave the famous and admittedly dysfunctional protagonists of the season behind, Abraham and Sarah, Hagar and Ishmael and Isaac. Instead, we turn to the prophet Jeremiah, who in the 2nd day Haftorah pictures our mother Rachel, weeping poignantly for her children. In the book of Jeremiah, in chapter 31, the prophet offers words of healing. He tells us that after the pain of collective transgression comes God's great love, an ahavat olam, that will bring reconciliation. Tears will be wiped away. But among this nechemta, these comforting words, there is the stark image of Rachel weeping for her children. Kol barama nishma nehi b'chi tam rurim Rachel mekaba al banea me'ana lehinachem al banea ki einenu. A cry is heard in Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children who are gone. Brokenness may heal, but the losses remain. Rachel weeps because her children are dead, and nothing can bring them back. The backstory is that Rachel was a young mother who was suffering relentlessly from prolonged infertility and familial torment. When she finally conceived and birthed Joseph, followed by a son she named Ben-Oni, the son of Majoress, later renamed Benjamin, she was dying in childbirth by the side of the road. Rachel knows that she cannot protect her children, that they will suffer greatly in her absence. The desperate image of a laboring woman dying beyond the safety of her own birthing bed, hidden in the bushes for scant cover, is particularly resonant today. And Jeremiah teaches us that even though better days may be ahead, it is equally valid to stay with the pain and mourn it deeply. That kind of Jewish pain does not easily dissipate. Yet there is a counterpoint. Asking why we blow 100 shofar blasts on Rosh HaShanah, the rabbis of the Talmud in Tractate Rosh HaShanah 33b, in case you want to look it up, find the answer in the book of Judges. Now, the book of Judges is basically a collection of men failing forward and one woman cleaning up the mess. They read the prophetess Deborah's victory pain when she routs the pagan military Sisera. The Hebrew Bible also imagines Sisera's mother, despite her being an enemy of Israel, weeping and waiting for her commander's son to return home. This is from the book of Judges. Through the window peered Sisera's mother. Behind the lattice she whined. Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why so late the clatter of his wheels? The inevitable cannot be staved off. Sisera's mother will learn that her son is dead. Scripture hints at Israelite triumphantalism. Peace returns to the land. However, this is not where the Talmud takes it. According to the rabbis, it was Sisera's mother's 100 mournful cries that correspond to the 100 shofar blasts in synagogue. It is a remarkable move towards shared empathy. It is not only Sarah Imenu, our tribal mother, who evokes the blast of the shofar. It is even this nameless enemy of Israel. In the words of pop singer Sting, they love their children too. These two texts teach us something profound about Jewish pain and Jewish love. The pain and love we feel for our own people, and the pain and love we feel for all people. The particular Jewish values of our tradition imagine the universal suffering of all parents in the midst of war. And despite the pain of the last year, I am buoyed by what the data tells us. A large majority, 87%, according to a recent poll cited in the Daily Forward, of American Jews support a hostage deal and bilateral ceasefire. They give me hope, and I stand with them. Like me, they want to see Rachel's children come home before there are none left to return. They consider it an ethical imperative to protect Palestinian and Lebanese civilian lives as well as Israeli lives. They desperately wish to avert regional escalation. And perhaps less tangibly, but more fundamentally, they remind us that we are meant to be an Am Rahman, a compassionate people, a people that integrates Ahavat Yisrael with the love of all humanity. Israelis deserve to live in safety and security. Palestinians deserve dignity and self-determination. And all deserve to experience a just and lasting peace, as fleeting and impossible as it seems now. Love for the Jewish people and love for all humanity, both and a great love indeed. Building a Jewish culture of healing after this impossible year will rely on internalizing that truth and living it communally. Some of us feel strong ties to and solidarity with Israel. We have family and friends there, know people sheltering in bomb shelters as we speak, and feel ideologically committed to the project of Jewish self-determination and sovereignty. Some of us connect to the land and its history and sites, having walked the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And at the same time, some of us have complicated, indifferent, or even highly critical feelings about the Jewish state. Some of us bear witness to the suffering of Palestinians and question how this can be perpetrated in our name, and have Palestinian friends as dear to us as our Israeli friends. All these are real, and our communities worldwide must honor and accommodate these diverse voices of conscience. If we silence Jewish conscience, then we diminish the Jewish civilizational project itself. If we suffocate our moral imagination, we stifle healthy and necessary dissent. Instead of plowing salt into the soul of our moral imagination, we should be sowing seeds. This unfathomable year has torn me apart and pushed me to the brink. It has humbled me beyond any experience I can articulate. How can I, as a congregational rabbi, hold these multiple truths without reducing them to zero-sum games? It is my responsibility to create a diverse and inclusive synagogue and hold people together with a wide array of conflicting views. And as I said on Rabbi Nebi's IPR radio show about 6 months ago, I am perpetually terrified and my failure is 100% guaranteed. Bringing together the particular expressions of my Jewish solidarity and the universal orientations of my humanitarianism, I give voice to my conscience and tears. I am not an expert in foreign policy, international human rights law, or military strategy. I am merely a teacher of Torah and a servant of the Holy One, conscripted to a mission of love. And yet, as small as it may seem in the grand scheme of things, I do not believe it is futile to expand the reach of Jewish humanitarianism in our community. Even if I cannot stay the sacrificial knife upon the altar, I am obligated to say, Hineni, here I am, if only to speak for the quality of our collective Jewish soul. Hayom Harat Olam. Today is the birthday of the world. We fill our lungs with oxygen and possibility, stretch our limbs with empathy. We strengthen our values even in our little corner of the diaspora. None of this is easy. There are bound to be deep disagreements. But to love each other is to take each other seriously. To take love seriously means to hold it and ourselves to account. To cultivate conscience means to make space for this to be said out loud. As we continue to pray for peace, it is impossible to know what the future brings. We do know that we can be roused by the blasts of the shofar. May we arise in repentance, mercy, and love.